The Antikythera Enigma. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon the remnants of an ancient shipwreck. Among the corroded statues and amphorae was a strange lump of bronze and wood, forgotten for decades until closer inspection revealed gears, dozens of them, intricately interlocked, all buried within a corroded casing. What they had found was unlike anything ever recovered from the ancient world. The Antikythera Mechanism. Dated to around 150 to 100 BCE, it's often described as the world's first analog computer. Built during the late Hellenistic period, it could predict eclipses, chart the movements of celestial bodies, and even account for the irregular orbit of the moon. For centuries, we assumed that kind of gear-based complexity didn't arrive until medieval Europe. Yet here, from a shipwreck off the Aegean coast, came proof that ancient Greeks possessed not only philosophical genius, but mechanical mastery. Its gears had teeth finer than a wristwatch, and its mathematical precision rivaled 18th century clockwork. It wasn't just built, it was calibrated. Every layer of its construction implies generations of technical knowledge passed down, practiced, refined. What makes it so baffling isn't just what it did, it's that we've found only one. There's no clear workshop, no production lineage, no surviving manuals. Some scholars believe the knowledge may have died with a single craftsman, possibly linked to the school of Hipparchus, or even Archimedes himself. Others speculate that this device was merely one of many, common perhaps in elite Greek households, lost to time and the tides. A quirkier fringe theory proposes that the mechanism wasn't purely for science, but for theatre, perhaps an elite toy used to demonstrate cosmic order to wealthy patrons. That's part of the mystery. Even with modern CT scanning and 3D modelling, we still aren't sure why it existed at all. Scholars still debate whether the Antikythera mechanism represents the peak of an advanced but lost technological tradition, or a lone genius's impossible one-off. Either way, it forces us to revise our assumptions. History may not move in a straight line. Sometimes the past had gears we no longer turn. The power of Egyptian blue, long before chemistry had names or periodic tables, there existed a colour that seemed to defy time itself. Known today as Egyptian blue, it first appeared around 2600 BCE, used lavishly on statues, frescoes, and ceramics. At a glance, it's simply beautiful, a brilliant, luminous azure that adorned the skin of gods and the robes of royalty. But beneath its surface lies a scientific enigma that still captures the attention of modern labs. Egyptian blue isn't just a pigment. Under infrared light, it glows, not with reflected light, but with luminescence, a near-infrared emission that scientists only began to study seriously in the 21st century. The mineral itself, calcium copper silicate, requires sustained high-temperature processing between 800 and 1000 degrees Celsius to form correctly. In other words, it wasn't stumbled upon, it was engineered. This wasn't a happy accident. It was made intentionally across dynasties, implying a sophisticated understanding of heat control, mineral sourcing, and colour permanence. For a civilization whose monumental architecture has survived millennia, perhaps it's no surprise they also crafted a pigment that doesn't fade. But the level of consistency in its production across time and geography is what baffles us. How did artisans maintain such purity without digital thermometers or mineral spectroscopy? Mainstream scholars agree on its chemical formula, but what's less understood is how widely it was used, and why. Why does this pigment turn up, not only in Egypt, but as far away as Mesopotamia, Greece, and even Gaul? Some fringe researchers speculate it was more than decorative, that its infrared qualities suggest it had a functional role, perhaps in early light absorption or temperature regulation. These claims stretch the boundaries of current evidence, but the curiosity is understandable. Why create something so advanced? Hen let the knowledge fade. By the end of the Roman Empire, the recipe was gone. It simply vanished from the artistic vocabulary of the world. Medieval pigments lacked its glow and stability. Even with modern manufacturing, recreating it at the same purity level remains difficult, expensive, and rarely attempted outside of academic settings. Scholars still debate whether Egyptian blue was the product of a lost chemical tradition passed down in guarded artisan guilds, or simply a serendipitous invention whose secrets were never widely shared. Either way, we're left staring into its glow, wondering how something so old can still outshine what we make today. Baghdad's forgotten batteries. In the basement of the National Museum of Iraq, nestled among clay pots and bronze trinkets, sits a jar that might, just might, hold the key to one of the strangest mysteries of the ancient world. It's unassuming at first glance. A small ceramic vessel with a copper cylinder inside, sealed with asphalt. But inside that copper tube sits an iron rod. When first examined in the 1930s, it defied easy classification. What was it? A container? A ritual object? Or something far more advanced? Today, it's often called the Baghdad Battery. Dated roughly to between 200 BCE and 200 CE, it challenges the very timeline of electrical discovery. When replicas were built and filled with acidic substances like vinegar or lemon juice, they produced a small but measurable electrical current, just enough to power a tiny light bulb or deliver a tingle on the skin. That simple demonstration ignited a debate that hasn't cooled since. Mainstream archaeology tends to approach the battery with caution. While the components could generate electricity, there's no definitive evidence that the ancients knew or intended this function. No copper wires, no conductors, no obvious signs of use. Still, the materials and their configuration are undeniably functional, which leads to an unsettling possibility. Either these were crude galvanic cells used for some unknown purpose, or we're misreading something even stranger. Some have suggested the devices were used in electroplating, applying thin films of metal onto jewellery using an electric charge. Others claim they were part of religious rituals, delivering a literal shock during ceremonies to inspire awe or fear. A few fringe voices even hint at medical applications, noting that ancient cultures, from the Greeks to the Chinese, experimented with electric fish and their tingling effects on human ailments. What's particularly confounds? Ounding is the silence around them. If these jars were widespread tools, where are the others? Only a handful have been found, and none with direct documentation of their use. There are no ancient texts discussing electricity, no diagrams of circuits. It's like stumbling on a matchbook in a Stone Age cave, revealing but contextless. Scholars still debate whether the Baghdad batteries were deliberate attempts at harnessing electrical energy, or if they were simply misunderstood storage vessels whose odd materials coincidentally align with modern science. Either way, they remain relics from a world that might have known more than we ever imagined, and just enough to haunt the margins of what we call impossible. Pumapunku, precision in stone. High in the Bolivian Andes, over 12,000 feet above sea level, lies a site so surreal it feels almost out of place on Earth. Pumapunku, part of the ancient Tiwanaku complex, doesn't dazzle with soaring pyramids or ornate carvings. Instead, it confounds with geometry, massive stone blocks cut with such uncanny precision that modern engineers still squint in disbelief. Some of the stones at Pumapunku weigh over 100 tons, carved from andesite and red sandstone, materials incredibly difficult to work with, even using diamond-tipped tools today. Yet these blocks are sliced with smooth, sharp edges, drilled with uniform holes, and notched into shapes that suggest modular assembly. One of the most iconic examples is a series of H-shaped stones, almost identical, aligned as if mass-produced, not in a factory, but over 1,000 years ago, sometime around 500 to 600 CE. Mainstream archaeology attributes Pumapunku's construction to the Tiwanaku civilization, a pre-Incan society that flourished for centuries. But here's the catch. The Tiwanaku left no written language, no construction plans, no detailed records of tools or methods. So how did they quarry, transport, and sculpt these behemoth blocks without iron, wheels, or draft animals? Even today, transporting 100-ton stone across uneven terrain would be a logistical feat, yet these blocks were dragged, some from quarries nearly 60 miles away, and their joins? So tight that even a razor blade can't slide between them. Were they levelled by sight alone, or was some other method at play? Some researchers have proposed that the stones were softened using plant-based chemicals, a controversial idea that's gained attention in fringe circles, but remains unproven. Others suggest the use of primitive copper tools and abrasives over decades. That too seems like an extraordinary investment of time and labour, Esbe. Chile without signs of error, test cuts, or discarded prototypes. The work is deliberate, mathematically consistent, and strangely modern. One eccentric theory posits that Pumapunku was an ancient landing pad, its layout designed for something beyond human transport. These claims are rightly criticised for lacking evidence, but they persist, partly because the real explanation remains elusive. Scholars still debate whether Pumapunku represents the natural apex of Stone Age engineering, or the remnants of a lost methodology we've yet to rediscover. Whatever the case, it challenges our ideas of what ancient societies could do. They may not have had steel or electricity, but they had vision, and the means to carve the impossible into stone. The Indus water puzzle. Long before Rome had aqueducts, or Greece imagined democracy, a civilization thrived along the Indus River Valley, quietly mastering the art of water. From around 2600 to 1900 BCE, the cities of the Indus Valley, Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dholavira, weren't just populated, they were planned, laid out in neat grids with wide avenues, brick-paved roads, and standardized weights. These cities displayed a civic foresight most modern urban planners would envy, but it's what lay beneath the surface that continues to astonish us. The people of the Indus Valley engineered advanced drainage systems, complete with brick-lined sewers, sediment traps, and covered conduits. In some homes, bathrooms drained into central sewers that led to community treatment areas. Nearly every house, rich or poor, had access to running water and a toilet of some form. This wasn't luxury, it was standard, a social contract, built in clay. What's extraordinary is that this water engineering seems to have no clear precedent, no older tradition to draw from, no inscriptions explaining the system, no treatises on fluid dynamics, and yet it worked. Rainwater was collected, stored, and distributed. Waste was managed without contamination. Even today, Mohenjo-Daro's Great Bath, waterproofed with bitumen and perfectly sloped, defies degradation after nearly 4,000 years. Mainstream archaeology sees this as evidence of a highly organised civil administration, perhaps even the earliest form of municipal government. But some of the details still elude us. We don't know how decisions were made or how standards were enforced across such vast territory. There are no palaces, no royal tombs, no grand declarations of power, just cities that quietly, efficiently worked. Fringe interpretations sometimes leap ahead, suggesting influence from Mesopotamia or even lost foreign technologies. Others point to the complete absence of obvious rulers or weaponry, asking whether the Indus Valley developed a peaceful technocratic society, one built more on water control than military might, and then, without warning, it vanished. By 1900 BCE, the cities began to decline. The water systems fell into disrepair. Climate change, tectonic shifts, or river migration may have played a role, but the disappearance of such intricate infrastructure remains one of archaeology's great questions. Scholars still debate whether the Indus water systems were born from slow trial and error, or from a brilliant, centralized engineering tradition lost to history. Either way, what remains beneath the earth is a kind of whisper, of a civilization that solved problems we still struggle with today, quietly, anonymously, and with water as its guide. Roman concrete's secret recipe. Along the coasts of the Mediterranean, ancient Roman harbours still cling stubbornly to the sea, their piers and breakwaters largely intact after more than 2,000 years. Modern concrete, by comparison, often degrades within decades, eroded by salt water, time, and the elements. So how did the Romans build something stronger, longer lasting, and, in many ways, superior to what we use today? The secret lies in their concrete, opus caementicium, a blend of lime, volcanic ash, and seawater that not only hardened over time, but seemed to grow stronger when submerged. At sites like Portus Cosinus and the Bay of Naples, marine structures show signs of self-healing, cracks that sealed themselves with crystalline growths over centuries. Roman engineers may not have understood the full chemistry, but they understood the results. What they left behind were artificial rocks that resist decay by adapting to their environment. This wasn't accidental. Vitruvius, a Roman architect writing in the 1st century BCE, described in careful detail the importance of using volcanic ash from specific regions, like Pozzuoli near Naples. The ash's interaction with salt water created a rare chemical reaction, the formation of aluminous tobamorite, a mineral that actually reinforced the concrete over time, and yet, after the fall of Rome, this knowledge vanished. Medieval builders didn't continue the tradition. Renaissance architects favoured brick, timber, or newer types of mortar. It wasn't until the 20th century that Portland cement became the norm, and while it's fast and cheap, it lacks the longevity of the Roman blend. Ironically, in our pursuit of progress, we may have forgotten how to build things that last. Fringe theorists have jumped on this gap, claiming the Romans had secret formulas guarded by elite guilds or passed down through oral traditions. One tale even suggests that Roman concrete included exotic ingredients like goat milk or blood to aid in curing, though there's little hard evidence for that. Still, the persistence of these rumours shows just how magical their engineering seems through a modern lens. What's especially odd is that the Romans used different concrete blends for different projects. Underwater structures were mixed differently than domes or aqueducts. This implies a sophisticated understanding of material properties, far beyond a one-size-fits-all approach. Scholars still debate whether the Roman mastery of concrete was the product of conscious experimentation or a stroke of empirical luck that outpaced theoretical understanding. Regardless, the evidence stands, on harbours, temples and walls that refuse to crumble, whispering to us across centuries, "We built to endure." The Icelandic Sunstone compass, Viking navigation, has long inspired awe. How did seafarers from icy, fog-bound shores cross vast oceans centuries before compasses arrived in Europe? For decades, the question lingered like a mist over their sagas. Then came the whispers of a crystal, an object mentioned in medieval texts and Icelandic lore, known only as the Sunstone. According to one 13th century chronicle, it allowed sailors to locate the sun's position even when it was hidden behind clouds or beyond the horizon. A poetic exaggeration, perhaps, or a lost navigation tool unlike any other. In recent decades, scientists have taken that tale seriously, and remarkably, they found a candidate. The Iceland spar, a transparent form of calcite, has optical properties that can polarize light. When rotated correctly, even diffuse daylight becomes polarized in patterns that align with the sun's position. In experiments, researchers have shown that with a bit of training, a person can use this stone to pinpoint the sun's location with surprising accuracy, even in overcast conditions or twilight. That alone is fascinating. It suggests the Vikings may have possessed a natural technology, simple, durable, and deeply clever. But here's the mystery. no confirmed sunstone has ever been found in a Viking grave or shipwreck. The idea remains tantalizing but elusive. A single Iceland spar was discovered aboard a 16th century shipwreck near Alderney long after the Viking Age. Whether that was evidence of continuity or coincidence is still unclear. Mainstream historians remain cautiously intrigued. The Sunstone hypothesis fits what we know of Viking routes, traversing the foggy North Atlantic, timing their travel by solar cues, and navigating with uncanny precision. And yet, it's odd that such a powerful tool would leave behind no formal legacy, no diagrams, no consistent terminology, nothing but to mention in a saga and the faint trace of a crystalline path through the clouds. Fringe theories abound. Some suggest the Sunstone was guarded knowledge, used only by elite navigators sworn to secrecy. Others imagine a mystical or spiritual role, with the stone doubling as both compass and talisman. In some versions of the tale, the stone doesn't just find the sun, it communicates with it. Scholars still debate whether the Sunstone was a real tool, a poetic metaphor, or something in between, but the concept endures because it speaks to a timeless truth. Humans have always found ways to orient themselves, even when the sky offers no clues. If the Vikings did use such a device, it was not only ingenious, it was centuries ahead of its time. Sound technology at Chavin de Huanta. High in the Peruvian Andes, where the air thins and the mountains press in, lies a temple unlike any other. Built over 3,000 years ago, Chavin de Huanta was once the spiritual heart of a mysterious pre-Incan culture. But its most enduring power didn't lie in its sculptures or carvings, it was hidden in the air itself. This was a place where sound was engineered, not metaphorically but literally. The temple is a labyrinth of tight stone corridors and ventilation shafts, yet its acoustics are uncannily deliberate. Inside, priests or shamans likely played massive conch shell trumpets, patutas, which sent low-frequency roars echoing through the tunnels. Archaeologists and acoustic engineers who've studied the site describe how these sounds ricocheted through chambers, creating illusions of movement, disorientation, even voice-like effects. It was, by all accounts, a sensory experience meant to awe, confuse, and control. Mainstream scholars agree Chavin de Huanta was a ceremonial complex, possibly designed to stage transformative religious experiences. But here's what makes it extraordinary: the manipulation of human psychology through sound. Certain frequencies cause vibrations in the chest. Others tap into primal reactions: fight, flight, trance. The Chavin people seem to have understood this intuitively. You didn't just hear the ceremony, you felt it deeply. Modern researchers have replicated these effects. In one study, microphones and sound sensors were placed in the temple's galleries. The results showed deliberate frequency tuning, specific sounds that travelled better through stone corridors than others. This wasn't just clever, it was design, a kind of prehistoric acoustic architecture aimed not at clarity but at awe. Fringe interpretations, as always, push further. Some claim the temple was a mind control device, others suggest it functioned like an ancient sound weapon, using resonance to induce fear, obedience, or even hallucination. While such claims stretch the evidence, they point to a deeper question: how did a culture with no written language master acoustic manipulation on this level? And then there's the underground, literally. Beneath the temple lie drainage canals that function like organ pipes designed to roar during heavy rains. Imagine entering a pitch-dark maze, hearing thunder from beneath your feet, and guttural horns moaning through the walls. This wasn't just ritual, it was immersion, theatre, technology. Scholars still debate whether Chavin's sound design was a product of empirical trial and error, or a lost tradition of acoustic engineering known only to initiates. But one thing is clear: thousands of years before microphones, amplifiers, or concert halls, a mountain temple turned sound into power. and left its echoes waiting for us in stone. Conclusion: across continents and millennia, scattered through deserts, buried in temples, sunken in seas, these remnants whisper the same haunting truth. The past was not always primitive. From the gearwork of ancient Greece to the engineered acoustics of Andean temples, humanity has repeatedly reached moments of brilliance, then forgotten them. These lost technologies aren't just curiosities, they are windows into civilizations that understood nature differently, saw materials not just as resources, but as mediums of meaning. Some worked in stone, others in pigment or sound or salt water. What binds them isn't just technical skill, but intention. Someone made these things with care, with knowledge, and with purpose. And now we are left trying to reverse engineer not just the how, but the why. Science still debates many of these puzzles. Were they isolated innovations, lucky breakthroughs, or fragments of broader traditions that never left a record? Maybe the truth is more uncomfortable, that progress isn't linear. Sometimes we lose what once was common. Sometimes we marvel at things our ancestors simply understood. And perhaps that's the real mystery. Not that these technologies were lost, but that, in rediscovering them, we rediscover ourselves.